Hi beautiful ladies, welcome back to my channel. So today I want to talk to you about the importance of entering new spaces and not being afraid to do so. I've noticed that a lot of women who identify as Black have a harder time entering spaces that are occupied by other races because they are afraid of racism. And while I do understand the complex history of race, I do think that it's important for us to be able to adapt and be resilient and move forward so that you can increase your resources. When you tap into more than one space, especially spaces outside of the Black community, you expose yourself to more resources, more opportunities, more connections, etc. And if you kind of just keep yourself to the Black community or even just your own family, your own social network, your own community that you grew up in, you are really limiting yourself to all of the other possibilities that exist on a macro level. Maybe there's more opportunities in neighboring cities, in neighboring states, in neighboring countries, what have you. When you are afraid to enter these spaces because of your race, or the assumption that you're going to encounter racism because of your race, it's an extremely limiting belief. It's a self-depreciating mentality to have because you're not even giving yourself the opportunity to experience good things. You kind of just immediately assume that bad is going to happen. And so, you know what? Because of this fear, I'm going to kind of hold myself back instead of actually trying to see what's out there. And I know that Black people play a role in holding each other back. You decide for yourself, for example, that you want to learn a new language, you want to learn new cuisine. You're immediately told that number one, you think that you're better. Number two, you are bougie. And number three, it's inevitable that the big, bad, scary white man's going to be out there to kind of ruin your life and put you in your Black place. And I've come to tell you that in 2024, this couldn't be further from the truth. Yes, racism exists, but it is not a unique experience to Black people. I think Black people need to get rid of this victim mentality that they are the only ones who experience racism, okay? It's not just white people who are out there being the big, bad, scary devils, being racist to everyone. There are other races who are racist to each other, and Black people are included in that mix as well. So I just want to give you some encouragement on how to handle being the only woman of color in predominantly white spaces. And hopefully this will kind of ease your nerves, if you will, and give you the motivation and encouragement that you need to push yourself forward, expand your opportunities, and explore new spaces. So as I said before, not every white person is racist. Most white people, though, especially in elite spaces, white people who are well-to-do, white people who come from generational wealth, and they're not going to market to everyone that they come from generational wealth, but there are often signs that they come even from a middle-class family. Most of these people just guard their spaces from people who seek to corrupt it, and as they should. So if you come from, for generations, let's say your great-grandfather came to North America to build a life. He came with absolutely nothing, and he was able to build a life for your grandparents from scratch. And then he passed that on, those skills, those resources, what have you, that legacy on to your grandparents and then to your parents, and then by extension to you. Put yourself in your great-grandparents' shoes. If you came to a new country, or maybe you came from poverty, your family's been here from generations, but you pretty much were able to build a comfortable life for yourself and your family from scratch, wouldn't you also want to protect and preserve that from someone who's done absolutely nothing for themselves, who then think that they are entitled to your hard-earned resources? You would want to protect that. You would want to make sure that those assets and those resources stay within your family. And even if your family is not doing anything with it, you'd much rather see it go towards your offspring, your legacy, than some random stranger, would you not? Many of us understand having to build from scratch, or even from being raised in a middle-class family, to then becoming the first millionaire in your family, or whether you came from a lower socioeconomic status and were able to elevate yourself to middle class, you understand how hard it is to be able to achieve and pull yourself to the next level. Okay, and this is a mentality that every person should have, regardless of race. But unfortunately, it's only the Black community that does not understand the importance of legacy and maintaining legacy. And a part of maintaining legacy, as much as people don't want to hear it or admit it, is being elitist, controlling who you let into your world. And that does not equate to race, because many people will tell you that they don't have a problem with your phenotype. They don't have a problem with the way that you look. Who knows? Maybe their ancestors did way back in the 1600s, but it's 2024 for the most part. People are informed enough to know that judging someone by the color of their skin, their phenotype, their hair texture is an outdated mentality to have, and that is not a direct correlation to that person's character. Don't automatically adopt a mentality that, like, oh, white people are just going to be racist to me because, they're just evil and they just hate other races. If you know that you are hardworking, you're a law-abiding citizen, you contribute positively to society. Many of my listeners are entrepreneurs. You have a well-paying, stable job, then you have nothing to worry about. And if that person does have an issue with you being in their social setting, that's their problem. And they likely have other issues that have absolutely nothing to do with you, but they are using you as an outlet to project their own internalized feelings. And a lot of times it is much more complex than just the color of your skin. So for example, sometimes as a darker skinned woman, white women have been centered as the pinnacle of beauty in the West because white men did their job and centered their women, and then by extension themselves, as the be all end all, right? Like, it is every culture's responsibility to center themselves. And so now that we're kind of seeing a shift in other images, more than ever, kind of being centered as other acceptable forms of beauty, some white women have an issue with that. Not all, but some have an issue with exoticals being desired, especially if they're desired by white men, because now you're taking away resources that could have gone to them. And now it's like, oh, this woman who historically has been beneath me looks wise is now getting the attention that I used to get. And that's kind of hard for me to grapple with. And the same goes for other races interchangeably. There's a rift as we increase multiculturalism. And so people are having to navigate and negotiate mentalities that they used to have are now becoming obsolete, and people are now starting to accept and honor other types of beauty. So it really is much more complex. I would not allow someone's surface level reaction to you to stop you from entering new spaces if you do, in fact, encounter a cold shoulder or a pushback. Like, at the end of the day, so what? If this person does not have the legal or physical power to stop you from pursuing or entering space, why would you give them power to stop you from accessing an opportunity or resource that could really push you into a better direction? Don't give people the power to do that and to have that ownership over you. Furthermore, other races will enter Black spaces if it's beneficial to them. So for example, Koreans enter predominantly Black neighborhoods and they open up beauty supply stores. Or the Kardashians, they entered Black spaces. They adopted the Black quote unquote aesthetic so that they could profit off of the aesthetic, and it worked for them. Kim was able to become a billionaire off of this business model, if you would. And Kylie is just shy of being a billionaire. Both of these ladies had that working model and they used it to their advantage. Kim Kardashian didn't become a billionaire until she married Kanye West. And it wasn't just because she married Kanye West, but she was able to, like Skims, for example, to promote sort of like the hourglass shape that is most common with people who have an African phenotype. The aesthetic of overlining the lips with Kylie Cosmetics to market fuller lips. That's something that's also associated with the African phenotype. And they did that by attaching themselves to Black men so that they could have access to the Black community. And even though there was a lot of pushback by Black women, it still ended up giving them the visibility that they needed to push and promote their brand because they used, in part, the negative publicity to move ahead. Women like Kim Kardashian and Kylie Jenner and Khloe Kardashian were not able to succeed in their own white communities because if they were, let's face it, they would stay there because there's more money there. So they went to the Black community because they know the Black community does not gatekeep their aesthetic and culture, if you will. And so they went there and were able to profit off of the aesthetic. Whether it's the Koreans opening up a beauty supply store or the Kardashians or so many other examples, like this is always a shock and such a disrespect, if you will, to Black people because Black people don't enter other spaces and try to find ways to profit off of it for their own good. And a lot of that stems from the fact that Black people just simply don't have enough exposure and are not willing to venture out and see what else is out there. So they kind of just stick to the confines of their own thinking and their own communities. And look what the result is. You'll find that most white people will tolerate or accept you once they discover that you are genuine, that you have something going for yourself. You shouldn't go through life looking for people to accept you, especially not white people, because when you're looking for this acceptance from people, you are giving them power. You are placing them at the top of the hierarchy and saying that you are at the top, and so you're something that I aspire to get approval and praise from. And if you are looking to level the playing field for yourself, why would you pedestalize someone who is not you, right? You should enter spaces and be able to navigate and play ball essentially for your own good. You also, when you have this mentality, as I said before, it centers whiteness by fixating on their acceptance. And so I would do away with this mentality essentially and adopt a multicultural approach and glean resources from other races as well. So look to create connections with people of Indian descent, people of Chinese descent, for example. These two cultures, they dominate the IT and tech spaces. So, for example, if you're someone who is interested in these industries, it would be good to network with these two groups because they dominate these industries. They hold most of the resources, in a lot of cases, the hiring power or the business contracts. And even though these cultures know how to keep resources within their community, but if they see that you are talented, that you are hardworking, you're not a stereotype, because you don't have the right to have bad behavior, antisocial behavior, and think that everyone should accept just because you're Black and racism and slavery. Nobody cares anymore. No one's feeling guilty about that anymore because we Black people are not the only ones who have been wronged throughout history. And now people are kind of paving their own ways and doing their own thing and realizing that no one owes you anything. And so if you approach life without an entitled mentality, you will find that things will work out for you, essentially. Another tip is to get over the imposter syndrome. So the imposter syndrome is believing that you are an imposter, that you actually are not qualified or deserving of whatever resources that you're trying to get access to or that you've obtained. And so you're kind of just there undeservingly. If you're going to go through life and enter new spaces, you need to believe and be confident enough to know that you deserve to be in that space. Okay, especially when you are navigating a competitive multicultural market that is evident in the West, you need to be confident. Otherwise, you're just going to be holding yourself back and you're going to continue to lose to people who believe enough in themselves to say, look, I'm going to enter this space unapologetically. And even if I'm not 100% qualified, I know that I have what it takes to get there. So let go of the imposter syndrome and be confident enough to believe that you deserve to be there. And similarly, if you're shy, you need to get over that quickly. Okay? The longer that you hold on to this limiting belief, this kind of coy, oh, I'm kind of scared for people to see me, is the longer that you're going to hold yourself back. And that doesn't mean that you need to be an extrovert. You can very much be an introverted person who keeps quiet and who observes, and still be confident. As a matter of fact, people prefer that the higher up you go in the ladder, because it means that you are discreet and that will work in their favor. But being shy, being timid, and afraid to enter spaces is a turnoff, because you need to be bold and confident in order to make it in life. And in order to represent brands, companies, yourself, you're not going to get any clients if you are too timid to put yourself out there. Another way to successfully enter new spaces is to simply be qualified. Okay, if you want to be a part of being confident in a new space or confident in what you're doing is to know what you're doing, is to know what you're talking about, is to be well versed in that field. So, for example, if you want to be a nurse, you need to make sure that, first of all, you're qualified to be a nurse, that you've gone to school, that you've gotten the necessary licenses or qualifications. And not only that, but that you're staying up to date on industry practices. People can always tell the difference between those who are dedicated to their craft and those who are simply just trying to scrape by and just get a paycheck. And if that's you, if you're a part of the latter and you just want a paycheck, you don't want anyone to bother you and whatever, then that's totally fine, do what works for you. Just don't be surprised when people don't see you any more than just another employee. But if you want to be taken seriously and you want to be respected, especially if you're in a competitive industry, you need to make sure that you're qualified. And you should probably even take it a step further and get emerging qualifications that are starting to be recognized in your industry. And a good way of gauging that is simply just look at job postings. Go on Glassdoor or any other job board and just type in the name of your position or the name of the positions that you're interested in, and just read through the qualifications that employers are looking for, and just take note of the repeats. If there's a certain certification that you need to get, if there's a certain license that you need to get, consider getting that. Sometimes employers have programs where they will pay for the course for you as part of your development plan. If your employer has that or you're not sure, look into it. Ask HR, ask your manager. Better to ask HR because they're the ones who control these programs, and go for it if they do. If not, just consider it an investment in your future. Consider it the key to open the next door for you to enter these new spaces and for you to have the right to be there and to stay there. And just make that investment because you will get a good return on your investment when you invest in being qualified. Lastly, you want to make sure that you are cultured. I've said this before in other videos, and earlier in this video, but there is more to life than being a part of the Black community. And the Black community is very limited in its influence and its reach. Yes, the Black community is responsible for leading pop culture, and quite arguably, Black women and Black identified women are responsible for the beauty aesthetics that we see today. Everybody wants fuller lips, everyone wants bigger boobs, everyone wants higher cheekbones, everyone wants darker bronze skin, and obviously those are natural characteristics of women with an African phenotype, people of African descent. But when it comes to social settings, when it comes to a global outlook, you want to make sure that you have global experience. You want to make sure that you are cultured. You want to make sure that you are well versed in things that are going on around you, especially if you live in a multicultural community. And if you live in a multicultural community, that is not by mistake, that is by design. Your government was intentional in opening up their borders to different cultures and ideologies and beliefs because they understand that diverse communities, diverse workplaces, neighborhoods tend to perform better than monolithic communities. So when everyone thinks the same, does the same, believes the same, they tend to underperform compared to spaces with diverse viewpoints. Because when you have different ideologies, it provides different ways of looking at things and it gives you a competitive edge. That is why the West has opened up immigration, especially to people from Asian countries, because they recognize that people from those countries have been exposed to different ways of being productive. They recognize that they are leaders in certain industries, and so opening up talent from those parts of the world will give them a cutting edge against their competitors. And so if you live in a multicultural community, and if you don't live in a multicultural community, now is your opportunity to. If you can migrate to another country, and it doesn't need to be the big three, it doesn't need to be the United States, Canada, or the UK. There are so many other countries that you can go to and get probably even better opportunities. Open yourself up to different cuisines, open up yourself to different lifestyle practices like different spas, different ways of self-care, and you'll find that not number one, not only is it interesting to learn about other cultures, but you'll notice that you'll have an improved quality of life because you're exposing yourself to practices that benefit you that you probably otherwise wouldn't have experienced if you didn't open yourself up to these experiences. A part of obtaining these experiences is forming allies from different walks of life, different age groups, different ethnicities, different nationalities. You never know what you can learn when you are open minded and when you get to know other people who are different from you. I hope you found this video helpful. Let me know if you are currently in the process of entering a new space. Maybe you're moving to a new country, maybe you're starting a new business, maybe you're marrying into a family that's different from yours. How are you coping? How are you adjusting? How are you getting yourself ready? I'd like to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.